this video, our Camaro gets low with a serious suspension upgrade. What's going on, guys? Greg here. Welcome back to the shop, and today we are back at it again with our project Camaro. Now, if you need to get caught up with all the mods we've done to this car so far, make sure to subscribe to the channel, check out the rest of the episodes. But in this episode, we are doing two things: getting the stance right on this car and getting this thing handling the way it should. And we're gonna do that with what I have in front of me. We've got a BMR lowering kit first that's gonna lower the car 3/4 of an inch in the front and 1 inch in the back, getting that stance perfect and getting that gap out of there from the wheel and tire to the fender. Second, we've got this AFE Control Series sway bar kit. Now, this kit is going to include a 35mm diameter front sway bar and a 32mm diameter rear sway bar. These are way thicker than the original OE sway bars, so they're gonna get rid of all that sloppy body roll. So by the end of the video, we are gonna have a car that's gonna look right and it's gonna handle 10 times better than it did from the factory. And I also got a surprise for you guys because we may be bolting up a new set of wheels. All right, guys, we're gonna get right into it and start with the disassembly of our front suspension on our Camaro. Before I can get to anything, I gotta get rid of all this plastic shrouding so I can access that factory sway bar. All right, guys, we got the passenger side strut out of the car. Now it's time to disassemble it using our spring compressor to get the factory spring off and our new BMR lowering spring on. Now keep in mind, we're gonna utilize pretty much all of the factory components except the OE spring when we get this all assembled and back in the car. So let's get the spring compressor on it. Let's get started. All right, guys, so we got our new BMR lowering spring onto our passenger side front strut. Now, I was hoping I was gonna be able to slide the spring on without having to use the compressor and bolt down the top strut bearing plate. However, it is not that short enough compared to the factory spring, so we'll have to put our spring compressor on, compress it just slightly so we can get our top strut mount and bearing plate on, bolt it all back together, and get it back in the car. Compressor and All right, guys, well, the front suspension install is going really smooth with our Camaro, and we've got both BMR springs installed on our front struts. Now, to finish things up, we got to get that AFE sway bar bolted in, all of the undershield back under the car, and then we can finally move to the rear. All right, guys, before you get the new bushings installed onto the AFE sway bar, AFE does supply you with a little bit of grease that you need to use on the inside of the bushing. It's greased. I'm going to get them installed onto the sway bar itself. And then our new bracket, we'll repeat the same thing on the other side. Now, I mentioned before that both the front and the rear sway bars are adjustable. That's what these drilled holes are on the ends. Now, you have two adjustment points for the front. Putting in your sway bar link on the outermost hole will be the softest setting for the sway bar, and the innermost hole will be the stiffest setting for the sway bar. For us in our application, we're definitely going for the stiffest setting, so we're going to put it on that inside hole and tighten it up. Another thing that's really nice about this AFE kit is that you can use your factory sway bar end links. It doesn't require any kind of adjustable or aftermarket links. All right, guys, we got the front suspension on our Camaro all finished up. Now we're simply going to repeat the exact same process in the rear, and soon enough, this thing is going to be back on the ground. Let's get this old sway bar out of here. Looks like we were just able to squeak her out. All right, so we're gonna take these plastic covers off the lower control arm on each side of the car. We are gonna have to lower this control arm to get the factory spring out, and the lower shock bolt also needs to come out, and that's hidden by this cover. So that's why these are coming off. Once they do though, we can start getting the shock unbolted so we can lower this control arm, get our factory springs out. So I've already got the lower shock bolt removed here. Next, I want to remove this bolt on the end of the lower control arm that attaches it to the subframe. Now, once that's out, I do have the lower control arm supported. We're going to gently lower it down because this coil spring is under a ton of tension. We're going to do it very safely, pull this spring out, install our new lowering spring, raise the control arm back up, bolt it back into place, and we'll do the same thing on the other side. We'll install that isolator onto our new BMR spring, and then we can install this back into the car. All right, same as the other side. Support the lower control arm, unbolt the shock, unbolt the control arm from the subframe, and take it all down. All right, guys, the suspension upgrade on our Camaro is complete. Now remember, we did this for two main reasons. Number one, we want our Camaro handling better, so when we do take it to the track, it's gonna be ready. But number two, we want to get the stance right on this car and completely change its attitude. And that wouldn't be complete without the right wheel and tire setup, so we bolted up these. These are Savini's SV F4 wheels in a matte bronze finish, 20 by 10s in the front, 20 by 11s in the rear, all wrapped in Nitto tires. This thing not only looks the part, but it performs also, so let's take it out for a ride. All right, guys, got our Camaro out on the road for the first time after these suspension upgrades. First impressions, it rides a lot better than I anticipated. Normally, you kind of expect when you install a set of lowering springs, or really any performance coil spring, that the car is going to ride a lot rougher because the springs are stiffer. They're designed to reduce body roll and, you know, make sure the car stays planted and it handles better. And that in turn can create a rough ride. These BMR coil springs, I'll be honest, they feel great. I'm driving on your average roads with average bumps, and this is totally livable on, you know, any road really. So it's a good note if you do drive your Camaro every single day. This is a great spring setup to have in your car. Now, as far as the AFE sway bars go, I've had this thing through a couple corners and it feels so incredibly balanced and planted. I can't speak enough to how well this car feels in the corners. Really, just feels great. Here's one coming up here. Let's hit this one. Oh my God, it feels so good. So good. Really, guys, I can't be happier with how things turned out with this suspension upgrade. Between the coil springs, the sway bars, and of course, we had to upgrade the style and the stance with those Savini wheels. The car just came out fantastic, but we're still only touching the tip of the iceberg. We got a lot more to come with this Project Camaro. So, if you want to make sure you stay up to date on all the latest upgrades, subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and I'll see you guys next time.